before I get into the spraying, I just want to reduce the size of this bridge patch that's been put on. From my perspective, it's just way too big, adding unnecessary weight to the equation, and really its only purpose was essentially to offer a nice way to plug the old holes and give the bridge pins somewhere new to plug into. We've resolved that issue by putting in rosewood plugs in actually the, I guess, newer holes, let's say. So those are all plugged up. And then we put a bit of epoxy down to plug up the old holes, or the original holes, and then we drilled the holes that we're now going with. So this patch here should be completely unnecessary. It's very tiring, planing upside down inside a guitar. So this is the point in this video series where I get massively trolled, but hear me out. There are these areas on here, on the body, like here in particular, there's one there, under the pickguard, which we're not worried about. There's just a few different areas where the wood, it looks sort of stained, like a different colour, and I'm all for road wear. But this is actually poor body repair. Like, you can actually see a bit of a halo around here from that sort of like inch thick pool of lacquer that they kind of reset this bridge in. And I'm just not really cool with that. And I put the first coat on. I was really hoping it would sort of even out, and it kind of didn't. So I'm going to try a very controversial thing here and just paint some oxalic acid, one of the two, onto the guitar, and see what it looks like. So I'm actually just going to start with a fairly inconspicuous area, just in case it does really bad things. So we'll just paint a little square of it on here and see what it does there. Now, you're supposed to leave it for 10 minutes, so bear in mind there's a little stain bit there and a little stain bit there. Of course, this will all be covered by the pickguard, so if this goes terribly wrong, we're not in so much trouble. If I paint this and it goes like green or whatever, then obviously that's a big problem. And let's try underneath the fretboard or fingerboard extension as well. Okay, so we leave that for 10 minutes and then we wipe it off, and we'll see what's happened. Ideally, what I'm looking for is stains like that guy and this guy to disappear. So the ones I'm concerned about on this guitar are, there's a line there. I mean, it's accentuated by the fact that that's where the pickguard is, but there's definitely a line there, bit there, and bit there, bit there. And it looks kind of okay when like this, but when as soon as you put clear coat on, it for some reason just really accentuates all that stuff. So let's see what that's like. It's now 10 to 2. At 2 o'clock we will see whether this has been a horrible waste of time and a massive abuse of a vintage instrument, or whether it's worked nicely. Now there are also ones on the neck, and I'm going to kind of go for gold here because I'm less concerned about the mahogany. And I'm just going to paint this and see what happens. I don't mind sort of aged look, but what I'm getting is a sort of like dirty, blotchy patchiness, which is going to look really odd if the rest of the guitar is basically pristine. So this was never going to be a museum piece. The way I see this is a guitar for someone that wants a really sort of like pristine player's grade D-28. Oxalic acid, incidentally, is available at your big box hardware store as a rust and stain remover. You can pay fortunes for specific deck stain removers, but this stuff is a fraction of the price and is basically the pure version of what's in your deck cleaner. Okay, so I think I can see a slight reduction in the staining there, but I certainly can't see anything untoward. So what I'm going to do is just paint this guitar body, the whole thing. So let's just paint the whole thing. And I think we should be in a good place. Again, I'm not looking for brand new here. I'm looking for even. You know, there's a gorgeous caramelly colour to this wood. And I dare say that we'll lose a little bit of that, but that of course can easily be replicated with some, you know, tint in the clear. But what's much harder to deal with is like blotches like that guy there, that sort of, I think, ruin it a little bit. You can actually really see them there, like really quite clearly. Blotch there, blotch there, blotch there. It's just not a cool look. And of course, what we don't want to do is sand until the stains are gone, because we might never get to that point first and foremost. And if we did, you know, we'll have significantly reduced the thickness, therefore the stiffness of the top, which may make it sound better, but it may also ruin a $10,000 guitar. I think there's been a pretty good reduction in the staining. There's still this guy here and a little bit that guy there. It's certainly not perfect, but I think it's pretty good. Anymore, and I just think that I'm going to start causing more damage than causing good. So I think we'll call that good. What I will do is, instead of using shellac, I'm going to use a vinyl sealer, the Balaam one that goes with their lacquer, and I think that should help you know, reduce that blotchiness, because potentially what's happening with the shellac is, because it's so thin, it was actually sort of sucking right into the grain and making these sort of dark bits even darker than they would have otherwise been. So it's just a theory. I have some left over from a while back anyway, so no harm, no foul. And I'll just sort of give that a spray on in the booth and see how that looks. But I think we're looking pretty good. That feels nice to me. Yeah, I'm pretty happy. So the body's had 6 light coats of lacquer now. It's looking, you know, pretty nice. There are definitely some areas where the grain is still showing, which I sort of expected. So what we're going to do is we're just going to flat this back and get that nice and even, and then shoot some more coats on there. I'm just going to tack rag this down, because I'm going to use this, I'm going to use the air sander, and I don't want to be sort of getting grit on there and basically grinding it around the body. I've moved on to the front and actually changed my tack here. And I've found this before, and I don't know why I keep sort of doubting myself, but I've actually found that I'm actually much quicker, or it's much quicker, to flat back orange peel or grain or whatever, using 600 grit on hand or by hand, rather than using the Air DA sander. Don't ask me why, but it just is. So we're going to do that. I also find them far less likely to burn through the edges, as I actually have done on the back. Now, it's not a major issue because we're going to shoot some more lacquer on it anyway, but you just have more control when doing it by hand. So I've gone over this once already with the DA. It didn't really sort of do much. And then just as a sort of experiment, went over just like this once or twice by hand with some 600 grit, wiped it down, and sure enough, it was almost perfect. So that is nice and flat, just got some little stuff going on here and there. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that is just so much better. All right, so you can see this. What we're getting is no shiny grain showing through at all on this one. So that's going to be really, really nice. So one of the things that I'm really aware of is how brand new this guitar is looking, and we're in a really good place with it. The lacquer coat is all lovely, the grain is all the pores are all filled, so that's all good. But what I'd like to do is just put a bit of a tint coat over it, 1 or 2 coats, really thin so it's sort of nice and even, just to sort of like vintage it a little bit without going as far as relicking. So I've got some tape on here that I'm going to use just to protect the binding, but also to paint on so that I can actually sort of see what's going on. Normally when I'm staining maple necks, what I'll do is I'll use the Stumac vintage straw, and that's this one here. But what I found was, I don't know if this is really coming out, it's really quite brown, and I think the reason that it's not working here is because it lacks the yellow of the maple, right? We need the sort of yellow that you naturally get from maple to steer it, the colour in the right direction. And so what I did was I mixed up a little bit of the vintage amber, which does have this tendency to be like really super garish. I mean, obviously this is not what you do, but like the colour of that's the sort of stain. So, you run the risk of going really sort of far into the yellow with it, which of course we don't want to do. So what I've done is I've mixed just a little bit of the straw into the vintage amber, and it gives us this kind of colour. And if we just paint a little bit of that on there, maybe a little bit more, just so you can see, it's giving us that nice sort of vintage tint that I think is going to serve us well with this. Maybe a bit too much brown. All right, let's give it one more of amber. Yes. Yeah, that's going to be awesome. Okay, so what we're aiming for here is to get a nice sort of aged hue, particularly on this binding. So let's just shoot some clear. You can see how tinted it is. And hopefully that will give us the look that we're after.
very happy with that. Okay. Moving your pen over here.